everybody. This week on the interview chair, we have none other than Mrs. Nancy Martin. Sit back and relax. Hi, everybody. Today on the interview chair, we have Mrs. Nancy Martin. How are you, Nance? I called you Nance.
It's okay. I've been called a hell of a lot worse. And even recently. Yeah.
So what have you been up to? Before we start, let's catch up. I haven't spoken to you in a long time. So.
Well, so I've been in the self-imposed prison being married to the mafia. And so, I've had the chain attached to the leg. And so the chain is off the leg now. Yeah, there's so much. I mean, we knew going to, but there's so much stuff you couldn't do.
Yeah, for sure.
So, that was. So anyway, I did a sweepstakes this weekend at the Cascade Hound Show. Did a bunch of sweepstakes in the groups, and then a couple of sweepstakes coming up. So I'm able to act like a civilized adult now.
Are you going to go forward with that?
Yeah. I'm going to bite the big fat bullet.
Excellent. Okay, let's begin then. I saw Brian on the weekend, so I don't need to ask how he is. So he's good.
He's fantastic. So cute with his beard.
I know. I can't grow that. It just comes in all patchy and white. Okay. All right, the first question. Tell me how old you were and how did you get involved in our sport of dogs, Nancy?
Well, how old I am now, nobody cares. So I was, we were like every family, you do what everybody does. You go to in those days, it was called the dog pound. And, we got the proverbial dog pound dog, which that thing was a colossal disaster. It opted to no longer live with us by jumping through the kitchen window at the mailman.
Jeez.
Yeah, and so she made a fast return with her stitches to the shelter. And then my father made the classic example of all mistakes that everybody does. He's got, the pet store, this little Cocker Spaniel, which had every genetic disorder, and it died at like 8 months. And so Finally, it was a disaster. So we had the first two disasters that a lot of us all do. And then we thought, you know what, maybe we should get a real dog. So, of course, then nobody knows anything. And I had seen, there was a TV show when I was in first grade, because I was 10 when we got our first dog, a purebred dog. It was called Buckaroo 500. And it was actually a 15-minute, these days we don't see that, 15-minute TV program. And it was on from 12 noon to 12:15. And I used to run home from school, jumping all the neighbors' fences and cutting through the yards to get home from school to watch this. Because the guy had a trained pony, and he had this trained Doberman, and her name was Dixie. And she did all these amazing things. And he used to say, Dixie, sit on my knee. And he would back up and kneel, and she would back up her little wiggle butt, sit on his knee, and she would jump on the horse and hold the reins. And I was like, okay, we got to have one of them. So we looked in the newspaper and we bought this Doberman, which was not a great one, but she did have some champions in her pedigree. And my father was a very successful labor union attorney in New York. Interesting stories about that. And he was at the time president of the Bar Association. So one of the local attorneys, they chatting, what are your kids doing? Oh, we got a puppy. Oh, we got a puppy. Oh, well, we show dogs, and you should go to the puppy show. So Donald Buxbaum. So we signed up for the Match Show Bulletin, and I took the little classes, and then we go to so the first dog show we ever actually went to was a Doberman match. And somebody I grew up with, went to school with, that lived locally, who also has Dobermans that some of your viewers may have heard of. Her name is Gwen. Her and I went to our first dog show together.
Wow.
How
about them apples?
Oh, yeah. And we were both about 11. And I just want you to know that I was first in junior showmanship. And I just want everyone to know that. And I remind her that. I remind her that regularly. But anyway, that's stuff. Yeah, oh yeah, I torture the hell out of her. But it's just interesting. So that's how it all started. So then, of course, we got the bug, and when she went to a different school, and then a couple high schools in our district, then she moved a couple of towns over. But in my high school that I went to, Marilyn Biggs was. She was a teacher there, Brian's friend. And so she got us more involved, joined the club, all this kind of stuff. And so that's that. So then we, of course, had to breed our dog because that's what everybody does. And we were really fortunate that we bred to a dog named Chip and Ebonaire's Gridiron, whose litter was a litter mate to Touchdown, which is Mary Beth's dog, Mary Beth O'Neill. Right, that was a very famous litter, bred by very famous local people, Eboniaire Kennels in the same town we lived in growing up. And so we were really lucky that we bred to a champion our first time. We were lucky. And then, so we had a kind of a cute red bitch. Well, then that was it. We were off to the races. So then we bred her the second time to a dog owned by Terry when Terry was with Pat. We bred to a dog named Lador's Fanfare. And that was owned by Terry Lazaro. And so then we had a puppy from that litter, having trouble with one of her ears. And she said, well, why don't you come up for the summer for a couple of weeks or whatever. We'll try to get that ear up. And my mother wasn't too crazy about me going away for the whole summer, but she farmed me off for a couple of weeks or whatever. And then rest is history, right? So I started working for Terry. And that was right when she went out on her own from working for Stevie. So I went to work for Terry, and then I met Pat Lawrence, and then I went to work for her and Joy that next summer, and that's how I got into the Chins.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's...
well, how old were you at that point?
I was 11 when we went to our first show. So I was about 12 and a half, maybe 12 and a half when I went to first work for Terry.
Wow, that's young.
Yeah. Yeah, like 1969, 68. Yeah, so a few years ago.
Yeah, it's a few years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
So then, of course, the mother of all mothers, who she thinks, and Janie says to me, hey, kid, you got some good hands. You want to come work for me? So, duh. And so I worked for her a little bit that one summer. And then the next summer, I worked for Bill for a little bit over some of those summer shows because I was actually still, I did a little commercial modeling when I was younger. And so I didn't want to leave that money because that's how I paid for showing the dogs and the horses. And I did ride on the side, too. But anyway, so I worked for Bill a little bit. And then Janie finally said, you going to come or not? And so... that's that, and then worked for her, and then the rest is history.
No. How long did you work for Janie?
So I worked weekends for a couple of years and lived up there for about 8 months on and off. I still was working at home a little bit, so I had to keep doing that little commercial modeling. And so then that was towards the end of their career, obviously. And then, it was kind of a transition, Elliot and Bonnie and Mark. I mean, it was an interesting bunch. When I worked and lived there, I lived with Dave and Erica McCurley, 47 Quasic Road, Woodbury, Connecticut. Just not like I didn't remember that or anything. And it was an amazing bunch. Elliot, my God, and Mark. And I mean, it was just an amazing, amazing bunch.
I bet. I bet you have some good stories.
Oh, yeah. My favorite of all, which I've never, ever told anybody, and I had...
Well, you can just tell me. I won't tell anybody.
Yeah, well, it's a great story. I had decided to keep it if and when Forsyth got roasted. But it didn't happen.
So what's the story?
Well, it's a great story. So they were, they had their moments, and we had a bad crew. And Scott, I was actually working with Scott. It's a long story, but there was a couple of young, not so great kids that were there, and Janie had the freak pen, and you put 940 dogs in the freak pen. That's this big, and that particular pen had a smaller clip, and I kept saying you got to be careful which clip you put on that pen. And so one of the kids puts the smaller clip on, and we have this Carrie Blue bitch, and she pops the pen open, and all the freaks in the freak pen They're now running all over the dog show. Right. Exactly. It was at Rock Creek Kennel Club. So I sprint like a lunatic to the front gate because it was a fenced-in fairgrounds. And I'm screaming, shut the gate, shut the gate. Because I figure, you know, if they're loose running around the fairgrounds, we're going to get them.
Yeah.
Okay, so they shut the gate. Well, you know, Bob and Jane are showing up in the station wagon with the wooden paneling on the side. You know, Janie with her shoes at 9:00, right? And we've backed up the entire dog show now. And we caught them all. Why? Because none of them had been exercised yet. So they all had to stop for the obvious reason. We caught all of them. And I'm like, phew. Then we get back and get together. And then I run back and tell the guy he can open up the gate. But in the meantime, Forsyth and Janie are like second in line. And they're like, what's the holdup? You know, we got dogs to show. And the gate guy goes, some guy named Forsyth, all his dogs got loose.
Oh.
So they come in and they're like, loaded for bear. And I'm like, everything's handled. We caught them all. They're all exercised, you know. But we kind of held up the dog show for about 15 minutes. But yeah, that was a classic.
That's what went through his head when the guy said there's some guy named Forsyth.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the bluebird, I mean, God, yeah. But I said, hey, I caught them all.
Right.
And you showed them all. So there you go.
Exactly.
That's a great
No
story.
harm, no foul.
Yeah.
So, what year did you leave Bob and Jane?
So, I went out on my own as soon as I turned 21. I actually had a license. I had a limited license. So that's how long ago this is. I actually had a license. And so probably 74, okay. 75, give or take. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So a few years ago.
and let's go on. What happened from there?
So then I was on my own for about,
Did you stay in the area?
Yeah, I stayed on Long Island, right. For about 7 years, I was on my own, and I had a really great client. You might remember that on that Gordon Setter dog I showed, that Autumn McGregor dog.
Who owned that?
You may remember, but anyway, they were really, really great clients. They owned a grooming shop and a dog store and stuff. And I used to get a lot of, pet clients and stuff, teach them how to show their dogs and stuff, training classes and stuff. Anyway, they owned a really nice, something from Helen, a real nice dog. It was the dog that I won my first group with as a handler, which was at Chagrin over Glassford with Boxer. Yeah. Exactly.
It's amazing how we remember those things, isn't it?
Oh, I remember that. So anyway, they were really looking to buy a kennel and really get into the dog thing or whatever. And so we used to get a lot of people who came into that grooming shop, and it was a really high-end feed store, which was sort of a big thing then. Now it's, there's a lot of them. But then it was really a big thing on the, on the North Shore of Long Island. So we had one lady who came in one day. She said, we used to recommend breeders and hook people up with breeders and get, good puppies sold to people. So she wanted a Basset Hound. So I bought her this really nice dog from Ann German, Tally Ho, which was sired by one of Ryan's family's dogs. And then I had a major on the dog, and then she had a stroke and was, unfortunately incapacitated. And then it was over. And so then the dog had to find a home. And I thought, well, maybe they'll know, because Anne didn't have a thought. Maybe they'll know it's sired by one of their dogs. So I looked up Brian's father in the judge's book, and called and said, hey, I have this dog sired by one of your dogs. And unfortunately, the lady is not, she's not going to be functional again, and she can't keep the dog. Do you think maybe you have some? So it worked really. Ultimately, they had just had an inquiry for somebody in South America. And so that's how the whole thing started with him. So that's how I really got...
Now, you brushed over, that's not just how you started with him. Let's hear it.
That's how we really met. Well,
that's how you met. But
yeah, so we met that way. Right, and then...
I'm not going to say the end.
No. Apparently not. It's 37 years later or whatever. But so we... obviously got knowing, I'll take you, okay. So the whole thing happened. Well, then I think he was a little sly, because then he sent me a dog to show, because clearly he would need a handler in that breed.
Yeah.
There's no question that he could never have done what I could.
What a sly guy.
Exactly. So he really wanted to finally start winning. Yeah. So he sent me a dog to show, and that was obviously, a reason to call more often. So yeah. So that was that, and now here we are all these years later.
You're brushing over things pretty easily.
Well, it wasn't very exciting. I mean,
here's sending you a dog to, and here we are,
and then that was
37 years later.
Well, it was, it's pretty boring like everybody else. You date, then you get married, and then you move on. But he was running the horse show business at the time, which is why I moved to Chicago, because at the time he was doing the horse show superintendent thing. And so it was just easier for me to move there, because that would have not worked. And so we did that together for about 5 years until it just got to be really, really difficult to do both, show dogs and stuff. Because he wasn't going to be a handler. He was going to do the horse show thing, which he was. And anyway, then we got a couple of nice basset hounds in, and then he just was like, he couldn't stay home. So anyway, then obviously we did that for 150 years, and then until we can't walk, and now here we are. So yeah, it's we got married in '83, so it's a long time. Yeah. And
so that from '83 to now, nothing exciting happened?
No, nothing. So obviously we showed a lot of dogs, and obviously a lot of winning in basset hounds. I've had group and best in show dogs in every group. And, he really wanted to show his basset hounds, but, which obviously he did, to some degree of success. And, I always said that, when I first went to work for Janie, of course, she has, still the last 5 cents she ever made is still hanging around. She used to make you steal the toilet paper, and it was great stuff. But, it really taught you a lot of good stuff. And so I thought to myself, as a handler, when the licensing stopped, one thing I never want to say, like if somebody calls you and says, hey, I have 6 Irish Wolfhounds that need to go to the dog show this weekend because I, broke my toe and can't run. You should never say no. So you have to have facilities, and you have to have a vehicle, because, Janie, she would say no to nothing. And she always had the opportunity to fill that void. And so that was really important to me to be, have enough knowledge with all those other breeds to be able to do that. And so, we showed a lot of, as a lot of odd breeds. I got just sort of happened early on, where, I just got a really good one in a kind of an odd breed, and then I sort of got tagged as the odd breed queen. But I will say one thing about that, just because it's a lesser number breed doesn't mean the dogs are less quality.
Oh, sure.
And in reality, in a lot of those lesser quality breeds, as far as numbers, they're actually better, and because it's not diluted.
Right.
And so I always, and the other thing is, I think, as as a professional, somebody's first string, second, or whatever. If you have an off breed, like a Chesky Terrier or something, the chances are you being number 1 string with a Chesky for somebody big like Gabriel is probably slim because of the choice. But If he made the choice, or if somebody said, this is like really a great one of whatever breed, and I'm going for it. And so that's what I did. And, I made a really big point to go to home countries, spent a lot of time in Poland with showing those Polish lowlands and a lot of those other breeds, Canaan dogs and all that. And, we finished a lot of those breeds. Spinoni spent really a lot of time in Italy and, in all Europe showing him and the world shows, and a lot of time in Europe for my German clients. We had quite a few clients out of the country. And so I've shown dogs in, lots and lots of countries. We had clients that lived in the Virgin Islands. We had a Ridgeback client down there. We used to go there and, look at what they had. And, we had a lot of Australian clients, a lot of Japanese clients for Basset Hounds and Sammys. So, a lot of traveling. I mean, I've shown dogs at a lot of places, and Brian's done seminars. And so I feel like I had real good luck and real good fortune of a very global view.
Oh, for sure.
A very, very global view. And so, so that went on for 40 years. And finally we were like, oh, God, we can't run anymore. And so Brian had been a large R, which is a steward's position at the horse shows. And so when Patty said, hey, you think you might...
I'm losing your volume again, Nancy.
Yeah. When...
It's like when you start to get serious, you start to get a little lower.
Well, I'm trying not to blurt out, bad words. So when Brian decided to be the field rep, it was an easy transition for him at the time because he had been a large R at the horse shows. And so, we were thinking, well, in the next couple of years at the time, we were going to have to back off though, because the 50 dogs at Chicago International days were, over.
Oh my God.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, the last year we did that, I literally almost couldn't drive home. I couldn't get in the car because I couldn't bend my legs, right? And I was like, this has to stop. And so that's really, how it happened. I mean, none of us want to quit. We just can't run anymore.
Can't keep going.
Yeah. So then the moving here thing, was sort of the next progression after showing dogs. But, I showed a lot of breeds that really mean stuff to me, like for yourself. I love the chins, right? And, showing the
chin lady.
Yeah, exactly. I love them. And, we still have them. We still have that little old lady. And a lot of breeds that we really enjoyed. I love Welsh Springers. Loved showing that breed. I love Springers. There's just a lot. I mean, I love the Spinoni. I mean, those are just amazing, amazing dogs. And that was so much fun early on, to show those kind of breeds. And, just a lot of those breeds that we got to really do. I love the Canaan dogs. Everybody loves what you like. You're crazy. But Bryna, she's just the most wonderful, crazy little Canaan dog lady. And they were fantastic. And just a lot of that stuff, we didn't show a lot of terriers, but the ones that we did, were, like Midge had that wire dog we showed and stuff. And, we showed wire-haired dachshunds for Midge. And I had some really, really interesting clients that I showed dog for. A lot of people may not know, but I showed Harlequin Great Danes for Chubby Checkers.
Oh, wow, that'd be cool.
It was cool. Yeah, he was really great. And I showed for J.P. Parisi when he was a New York Islander, and then when he went to Minnesota.
He was a great player. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, now his son is really, really famous.
Yeah.
Yep. I actually sold them a Doberman puppy from a litter I co-bred early on. Her name was Fiat, which just means little girl in French, right? Canadian.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So I wound up, this is the best story. You'll get this because, you're a fan. I also showed for Neil Anderson when he was a Chicago Bear. And so we had a lot of those local ones. But anyway, I don't know anything about hockey at the time. This is probably about 19. I was right on my own. So maybe like 75, 76. And so he comes, they come home for the summer, right? Didn't come to start camp. And they had she was about 5.5 months old, this red bitch, and she had to have her ears taped and stuff. And I met them because they came into this dog store that I worked at my clients. They want to get a breeder recommendation. So anyway, we sell them this puppy. So they're like, well, why don't you come to the house and tape the ears? Okay. So I go to the house. Well, this is like the day before training starts. Like there's Pat Price and Mike Kazicki and like all these like really, and I mean, these guys are all laying around the pool, and I'm like, oh shit, this has worked out pretty goddamn good. So, yep, now I'm dating Pat Price, right? And it was like really crazy. So then I was like really into the hockey thing because I had this great client. And I was dating Pat Price, right? And then I met a whole bunch of all those old athlete friends. A lot of guys that played Canadian football. That they all knew each other, whatever. And next thing I know, I'm showing a dog for this Canadian football guy. It was nuts. And so that was really, really fun.
I bet.
Really, really, really fun. Yeah. And so then when JP moved to Minnesota, I had been married. Brian had moved to Chicago, and I still showed dogs for him there.
Well, I didn't realize he was that active in showing dogs.
Yeah, I mean, I showed about 3 dogs for him over a period of time, and then they got a Springer, which from a breeder, and then we finished. Then they had 2 Dobermans and a Springer that we showed. But yeah, that was really fun. And for Rottweilers for Neil Anderson when he was a Chicago Bear.
Wow.
And so that was really fun.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and of course, Chubby Checkers was like the best. It was just so great. You know, he'd call you from like traveling or whatever, and I'll send you some picture. But before me, he did have one dog that was shown, and this is a long time ago. Barbara Jarmaluk showed Chubby's first dog.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, now that's a story, right? And so I finished 2 Harlequin Great Danes for Chubby, which was really, really fun. And then, you know, we'd get you in concerts and stuff, and yeah, that was always really fun.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, I've been really, you know, those are really fun people to show dogs for.
Yeah.
Yeah, like eccentric, you know, exotic. So I think that was really a fun time. And then when I married Brian and moved there, then I met the Germans at the Sammy National when they came to Wisconsin, and then started showing, that's like, you know, 25 years ago, started showing dogs for them. And then when ponds were going to be recognized, they had them too. I'm like, it's time to start getting the ponds going. So we had a couple of clients from other countries that were really, really good clients that we had dogs really consistently for, which was also a lot of fun.
Well, you did so well. I remember you winning with Sammys and Chins and Sononi, and I just remember you winning all the time.
Well, I have shown a lot. I don't know, I have to count, but it's over 15 Best in Show Sammys, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, and, you know, I don't even know how, you know, who knows about the other ones, obviously a lot. But what I will say is I feel that within the sport, you know, I was able to do that one thing I feel that I wanted to do, which was like never to say, oh my God, I don't know how to do that, you know, and then, you know, you clipper the jacket on a terrier or something because you don't know what you're doing, right? Like I never did anything like that, which I was really happy about, and always tried to learn, you know, really like from the mother load, how to do those breeds right. And I think that's why I was successful with them more early on than the average person, because I did treat them like first string. You know, if I had a Spinoni, that was my sporting dog, you know, and so I feel like that was really a big part of it. You know, if you elevate them to the level of their quality, not of the quantity of that breed being shown, or people, and now, like everybody has those garbage breeds, as Janie used to call them. I mean, I was the one that cracked the nut. You know, now everybody has one, and they all win, and they're good. You know, a lot of those breeds are, look at Phil, right? I mean, this is, you know, and Janie was like, oh, it's a garbage breed. And I said, well, I don't think Teddy thought Bichons were too garbagey when they came in, nor do I think Trainer thought that Porties were too garbagey when they came in with Charlie, right? But I think it's your attitude towards the breed. And so I always try to look at basically like you're supposed to be being judged. You're supposed to judge that dog against the standard, not against the popularity of the breed.
All right, for sure.
Right, and that is a frustrating thing with a lot of judging and stuff too, and a lot of other exhibitors. Just because there's 150 of one breed doesn't make the winner better than an entry of 2.
It's true. So over the years, you've seen lots and lots of dogs. Is there any dogs that you weren't involved with that you would have loved to have been involved with or thought about being involved with?
Yeah, so one dog I will say that when I was younger, I was young because it was my first Westchester. When Traveler came and went Best in Show at Westchester with Joe Schellenbarger.
I don't know the dog. Tell me the dog.
Oh, the Gretchenhof Columbia River.
Oh, okay. Yes, of course. Yes.
I was like, whoa. I was really, really impressed. And also very impressed at the time, because Dobermans was my original breed, but very impressed when Karina showed against Mistlebell, when Corky, the first time I saw that duel, you know, I mean, I'm like, you know, 13, 14. I mean, like a kid, 13, maybe like a kid. And I remember thinking, I don't know, that missile bitch, she's kind of prettier in the face. I remember thinking, I think I could suffer showing that one. That would be okay. And and then I did love the pug, that Dandy's favorite woodchuck.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really fancy dog.
I saw him when I was a kid too, because Bobby used to come up to the horse show once in a while.
Yep, exactly. And I always thought, and also, Risto. So when I worked for Trainer, this is a great story too.
That's what I want. All great stories.
Mark and Michael and I, and this was at the Garden, and so we did the breeding on the bench, which of course is illegal, but we snuck him in at night, of, Risto's mother and father, right? That Mallory, Mr. Muldoon, we had to service a bitch and hide that thing in the back and get the breeding done, which turns out to be, the ultimate best in show dog. And I always thought he was really, really fancy, because it was an odd breed at the time to do that winning, but I always felt like that dog was really like a special dog. And also Luke's Peak, Crown Prince. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always thought that was a pretty amazing animal.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some good dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening now? If you were, I'll go back. I'm going to backtrack a bit. Advice for young handlers. What advice would you give a young handler?
To maybe not get hooked into just showing dogs. Because our kennel was just a show kennel. Mm-hmm. Where we lived. We could not have a commercial boarding kennel. And, luckily we had a lot of clients, and we had a large enough kennel. I mean, we could easily have 70 dogs in that, 75 dogs in the kennel. But today, with animal rights and, the doodle thing and all these things we have over us, I think it would be, really smart of any young handlers to learn how to show dogs, but not totally depend on that. And to make yourself because what happens is when you're starving, and we all were young and starving at one time, you take mediocre dogs. Yeah. You take dogs for clients that have been through other handlers, right, for a reason. And but if you have doggy daycare or grooming or those other things, maybe not necessarily a full-time boarding kennel, because that's difficult when you're a handler, unless you have really good help. But you can do the other things. I think it's also really good mentally because, there's going to be some big changes in the future. And, if the docking and cropping thing comes, to a head, then that could be an issue with clients. And I think it would really be great to work with somebody. And I also think, our society it's basically a fast food society now. And, nobody spends 10 years working. Yeah. And nobody spends 10 years working for anything.
Instant gratification. So.
Exactly. And, part of it is the juniors thing is you push them to win. It's all about winning. And I think it's all about, what the important thing is. It's 5 minutes in the ring of the 50 hours you did at home.
Right.
And that has really been lost in translation because of a society. I mean, it's just the way it is. And, I think kids should know that they need to spend a period of time. But the other thing is, none of them have good business training. And it doesn't hurt to have some business sense. And a good suggestion for them, take a business course and take some courses, because they're all terrible about billing or how to keep records or receipts.
I was horrible until someone helped me. I was horrible at it. So.
Well, how would you know? And this is the thing is, if you have, just because you have talent in one spot doesn't mean you have it in the other. And a great example of a profession like that is doctors or veterinarians. They went to vet school. They didn't go to business school. And a lot of them are terrible because of it. Well, handlers, as you know, are the worst of all. I mean, they're terrible,
It's true. When Alice and I first got married, she was sure I showed dogs for cigarettes and hockey tickets.
Well, sometimes, these days, that might have been a better deal. Yeah. Because cigarettes now, absolutely. See, I could have got you free hockey tickets. You never asked. Exactly. And good ones, too. But I think that's the big thing. And I also applaud what the RHP is doing, and in particular, Carissa with the safe sport.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing. All of us, everybody has stories, right? Everybody. And either side of the fence, whatever you are, whoever you are, where you've been, where you haven't been.
Everybody has something. You're right.
Everyone.
You're right.
Guys, girls, young, old, gay, straight, LGBT, we don't care. Everybody has a story. And also bullying. There's bullying against each other. I remember Ricky said that, he didn't think he could be successful as a handler if he didn't hate his competitor. Well, why?
Yeah, exactly.
Why do you have to hate somebody? I always thought we all have people we have problems with, but I never hated somebody just because they were doing what I was doing somewhere else.
Right.
That is a ridiculous mentality. And I think that that's been really bad for the sport. That there was a generation of people that worked for those people who were taught that. And I think that's wrong. I think if you are secure, where you are not financially desperate, like if you did some pet trims or you did doggy daycare, you took your education a little bit about, like just a little course in accounting or something like this, and you had that safe sport, I think the sport would be a hell of a lot better. And I really think it could be part of the education. You used to have certain things to get your license. I know when I had my license, I had to jump through hoops. I had to show solvency. I had to have, you had to have a bank account. You had to have a vehicle, but nobody ever taught you how to really run the business and and also how to care for yourself, both physically and mentally, because that's the other thing. This is a business that can run you down mentally.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And that's never really addressed. And so my advice to anybody young would be to really, really not put yourself in that position where you're desperate with 6 dogs in that van, where you got to go to the show this weekend to make the rent, right? That's a really important thing. And, we've lost a lot of people because of that over the years. And also that gives you burnout. So I think if we can teach them to compartmentalize how to be successful in spots, it has never been done that way in our sport.
Those are great points, Nancy.
When we always had health insurance for our health. Dental too. Shocking. But, that was also part of teaching them. I'll tell you, when Larry came to work for us, Larry's mother was my client. And he came to work for us, and he didn't want to wear a watch. He said, he told me he had an affectation for wearing a watch. And I said, I have an affectation for you not wearing a watch. And so it was a little for a while there, first couple of months. And then I decided, what I'm going to do? I'm going to teach him to want good stuff. So the first year he came in April. And that Christmas, we bought him a really, really nice Gucci watch. Because we wanted to teach him, to strive to have quality things and to reach a certain place in life, but also to teach him that the timepiece isn't just about keeping time. The timepiece is about stages that you can arrive to in your life and how they can be learning tools. And so we gave him a really, really expensive watch for Christmas Day, and which he promptly dropped in the driveway the next day. And then I found it. And then I didn't give it back to him. Then he was afraid to say anything. But then we had a little sit down. I'm like, so where's the watch? I'm like, I have the watch. You dropped it in the driveway, right? He'll probably kill me for saying this. But what a life lesson.
Yeah.
Right? A life lesson. And those are the things in our sport really lacking.
Wow, those are good points.
Yeah.
How about, we haven't discussed many of your mentors. We've discussed who you work for, but what about your mentors, Nancy?
Well, for sure, obviously Terry early on with the Dobermans, and Pat and Joy for sure with the Chins, right? And Janie and Bob, of course, and Trainer, for sure. Bill was just...
What a list. That's a great list.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of scary. It's true, though. I worked for all of them.
Well, amazing.
And yeah, really. And each one of them, I sort of wanted a specific thing. And keep it, I'm still close to all of them, and also Betty, she was great because being a veterinarian that was the wife of a professional, she gave me a real, I got a real good education. I will never forget, and to this day I can see it. When I went to the kennel, to Westford Ho the first time on Lovett Road in Massachusetts, right? And I walk in, they take you in the trim room, and Betty's like, okay, and then you look at the petri dish, that Funkin' Wagner's jar with the ear of a poodle in it, right, with the wrap, and I'm like, oh, Jesus, right? I mean, you learn to put that comb through there. And that I can see that as vivid. I can even smell the formaldehyde to this day. Wow. That was a shocking visual, but I learned.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't wrap. Nobody got there, because you wrapped it and didn't put the comb through, and the tip of the ear fell off. I still can't sleep. Yeah. 55 years later, I still can't sleep. But that one thing also really taught, it taught you, unfortunately, these are people's pets. I mean, even if it is a kennel dog, it is somebody loves it for whatever the situation. But the reality is, it really taught me that the only thing that ever should matter is care.
Yes.
And that's it. The rest of it comes. If you lose, you don't lose. And I'll tell you, I really feel that is the thing that I really learned from Bill and Betty in just that one 15-minute situation. This is what happens when you're lazy and you don't pay attention and you think you're cute and cool and whatever, kids, teeny boppers, you're giggling or whatever, and you don't pay attention. This is what happens. And then I have to deal with it as the veterinarian, and then we have to deal with the client. And right. That was like an instant, I'm like, okay, that's never going to happen with me. And, it was really important to me. We never ever had a dog die, which few people can say. And, never had to find an emergency clinic on the road. Never had a dog get loose, and we never had an accidental breeding. And I don't give a shit if I didn't win one point in my career. That makes me successful.
Sure, of course. Wow.
And I think that that's what people should strive for. And that's what I got from my mentors. It's really, that was really, really, really enjoyed too, really, really pounded into you about care.
That needs to come first. You're right. The dogs always come first.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I got from those mentors. And it was an amazing bunch for sure.
Wow. That's an amazing list, even thinking about it. Okay. So you're what have you been doing lately? Can you tell me? I want you to tell me about the Fido pet food.
So when we were showing dogs, of course, back in the days of pedigree, and when we got so much free food, right? So we had an everyday veterinarian, and then Jerry Klein, did our important dog stuff. And our everyday veterinarian was Brian went to high school. Well, it's long. He went to high school with the husband, but he went to college with our first veterinarian, who actually also was our Welsh Springer client. Dr. Molly McCullough was her name. And Bob McCullough was Brian's college roommate. And then they had a young vet working there that we really, really liked. And then when she went out on her own, we went with her. So about a year or so into her working for us, she came to do heartworms one day. And, there's like 75 dogs to do heartworms or whatever. So she said to me, I'm just so surprised. Nobody ever complains about a bill. They just get a bill and they pay it. And I'm like, well, if anybody's going to complain of getting the vet bill, they'll have to find another handler. But we got to talking, and what she said was, people can't afford this, they can't afford that, they complain about the bill or whatever. And it made me realize. So what I said to her, well, like, who complains about the bill most? Or in your practice, where do you see like the problem areas? And it was like young couples, we can't afford the nail clipping. Okay. So then I said, well, what if I just give you dog food? And then when you have people or seniors, then when they come in, you give them a free bag of dog food, and that'll save them $40 a month or whatever it is, or 50 or 100 or whatever. Yeah. And then they'll have that money to pay you. So this is 35, almost 40 years ago. So we did that from our kennel. When we, clients would send a dog with a certain kind of food, you'd finish it in 30 seconds and you'd have 50 pounds left or something or whatever. And we didn't need it in the kennel. We brought it to the vet clinic. And then all those years of pedigree, and then wherever we won dog food, we would bring it to the vet clinic, and that's what they would do with it. Seniors on, that were on fixed incomes, or like a young couple, that has a dog that has some tragedy, breaks a leg or something awful, has a huge vet bill, maybe would have had to relinquish it to a shelter, but then we would pay for the food in essence. And so was like, we used to call ourselves the Good Sams. And so that we did from that clinic for years. So when I moved here to Oregon, and we chose to come here because my sister lives here, that's why we chose to come here, I had this thing about the pet food bank, because we had done it essentially, but it's only dog food, through our vet, Dr. Roush at the time in Grays Lake. And so there's a program here that I found when I moved here, because I didn't want to get in that, in the rescue drama, It was called Animals on Wheels, where they partnered with every senior center, and they home delivered the pet meals alongside the people meals. And I thought, well, that's kind of what we were doing through the vet clinic. We were providing pet food for seniors that couldn't. So it was this little tiny program, but the concept was great. So I went and volunteered. I brought some dog food, and I went and volunteered like the second week we lived here, which is 8 years ago now, April 15th, or we moved here June 1st. He took the job April 15th. We moved here June 1st. And the second time I went, I had my East Coast crates in the car, the little chin-sized ones, and some dog food in the back. And when I opened up the hatch to take it out, the one lady said, "Oh my God, those crates. I never saw crates like that in my life." And I said, "Yeah, they're how much are those things worth?" And I'm like, a lot of money. So she says, "Do you want to be on our board?" I was like, okay. So next thing I know, I'm on the board of this, Animals on Wheels things with a bunch of little old ladies from the senior center. And I'm like, oh my God. But the concept was great. I had to be so behaved, and it's just not possible for me. But the concept was great. So they did a little bit of a pet food bank, but it was really struggling and everything. And so I thought, this is like amazing. Why? Because as a dyed-in-the-wool, pure-bred dog person, right? Like, I'm a dog person. That's it, right? Like you, like we're a lifers. We have the hate, the breeders, versus the rescue, and breeders are horrible and rescue. We have that. And that is really also a problem for us, is that I could really blow this up as a purebred dog person and get support from within our ranks, where it's not rescue and it's not about breeding. It's about caring. And it's about a niche product and a niche spot. So that's what happened. And so I've just been like nose to the grindstone. And when I first started, the Animals doing about 3,000 meals for the year for senior pets when I first came here, and the first couple of weeks that first year. Mm-hmm. And now we do 8,500 a month.
Wow.
Right. So we have 14 senior centers, and what we do with the Animals on Wheels portion of it is they get an interview for home delivered Meals on Wheels. Everybody that applies for Meals on Wheels gets a home check from the social workers. And then if they have a pet, the research, and it's not our research, this research is from Meals on Wheels America, that as much as 70% of those seniors, especially homebound ones, get delivery of Meals on Wheels, not for themselves, for the pet, or to share with the pet because they can't afford to feed it. And I'm like, I'm like in the fetal position now thinking, how can this be? And all my dog show friends, of which there's a few, we have the answer. It's a bag of friggin' food. Yep. And so I just started calling everybody saying, hey, when you go to the shows this weekend, can you bring an extra bag of food? I'll be at such and such a show, or, donations or whatever. And it's a 501c3. So the club started being involved. And I realized there that this is the perfect way for somebody like me and all of us to be in a lane where even the PETA haters, they can't hate you. And they can't say anything against you. Why? Because these pets already exist in the home. Nobody's buying them. Nobody's breeding them. They're there. And we're keeping them from going into the shelter. And, Ingrid can hate us all she wants, but that ain't going to play on TV, because it's not going to play when you have an 84-year-old. Like, we got this one little old lady. I just love her. She's 84 with her little chihuahua who's like 14, right? What could be bad? There is nothing bad. And so I've also learned with speaking, when I do presentations, I've learned when I speak, like, to police departments, I do a lot of social workers, I do Oregon Department of Human Services, all this kind of stuff I speak. And I train them to not can the dog. Don't get rid of the pet. Like, if the person has no money or if they get arrested, don't take the dog away from the baby mama. Call me, we'll feed it, right? This is all of this, right? Because that's another thing that in our sport I didn't even know anything. What would I know about going to jail? Although some people think I should. But nobody has any concept. When you get arrested and they, they'll come and get your 5 Rottweilers or whatever and take you off to jail. Okay. This is crazy. I'm like, leave them home. Well, if we have an opportunity to feed those pets, because those count as relinquishment numbers against us. And the worst thing for all purebred dog people is shelter relinquishment numbers. Mm-hmm. Our fault is dogs that don't have homes, right? So I started realizing all these things that we have to provide pet food for these dogs so that they don't get relinquished to the shelter. And then that's not against us, because that's what the animal rights people use against us. Is that while you're breeding a litter of Irish setters or something, 12 dogs are dying in the shelter because you have 12 Irish setter puppies. Well, we know that's not true, but that's not what the general public knows. Right. And that's not what they're taught. Yeah. And so I just realized that this is really the way to go. So we have Animal Meals on Wheels. We have a pet food bank. We have a veterans program, and then we have emergency response. And on the third Saturday of every month, we have what I refer to as our full-service pet food bank and pantry. And we have everything: leashes, collars, toys, beds, flea market, like everything, right? That you name it, we have it. And food. And on a typical Saturday like this last Saturday, we traditionally go through over 4,000 pounds of food in just a 5-hour period. And we've had a couple of Saturdays where it's been over 5,000. So we're essentially doing between 750 and 1,000 pounds of food every hour and about 1,200 cans. It's huge. And we're feeding I just did the numbers, we're feeding on an average of about 480 dogs on just that one Saturday, and about 220 cats.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is huge. It's huge. And so we're easily going through 10 to 12,000 pounds of food a month between all the programs. And the real interesting thing about this, and how you can really see your metric of how this is effective and a real tool, is in shelter relinquishment numbers. So we have about 500,000 in our county. Our county shelter is a 50 dog. It's appropriate. It's about 1 dog per 10,000 or so people. We don't have 5 dogs available for adoption. There's probably not 12 dogs in that kennel. I'm going there tomorrow. Why? Fido Pet Food Bank. So I did a study, 3,714 other counties in the country. And I looked at all the other ones of a comparable population of 500,000, I called their shelter, what the shelter size is and what your numbers are. And I got a lot of them to send me their annual numbers. In other states, you'll have 500,000 population. There'll be 75 dogs in that shelter, right? It is an obvious cause and effect. And this has gone on now for a good solid 5 years. And so I really feel like it's a big answer. I mean, this is a really big answer to an underserved and absolutely, completely non-tapped resource that's needed. Wow,
that's incredible, and I applaud you. That's just so overwhelming when you think about it that way.
It is.
But you don't think about it that way. So.
Well, we don't, and I didn't. I mean, who does, right? Except we did do it with our vet, and I did have the inkling. But what's so great is the support. So, like a lot of the clubs, Clackamas Kennel Club, they give us money. A lot of the local clubs do. I also have a couple of judges that judge when they judge independent specialties. They have them write the check to us.
Wow.
Yeah, like Suley. I mean, there's several judges that do that. Jane Howard, when she does a Sheltie specialty, they have us give the check. So, and then, a lot of these people, when I talk to them, other club members or people who show chairman that, like Cheryl Candace Way or somebody one time, she said, we have meetings and we can't decide where to give money to. We give money to rescue, we buy a vest or whatever. Then they have a club meeting and they're like, hey, let's give it to Nancy. And I'll tell you, during our fires here, I mean, we've had the year here.
Yeah.
We had the fires, everyone's had the pandemic, and then we had an ice storm. But during the fires, the purebred, I mean, I could start crying. The purebred dog clubs were unbelievable. Eastern Dog Club. I mean, all these amazing clubs around the country. Damer sent us money from her club. Polly Smith, all donated to this cause for the fires. I mean, it's incredible because it's about helping pets. But it's really about us purebred dog because this is what this is about. It's about being in a lane because in the end, every one of us started with a pet and every one of us still has one.
Right.
Doesn't matter how many dogs we showed. Doesn't matter how much winning we did or didn't do. Everybody's got a little old lady that they love, right? I mean, they were a little old guy. I mean, it's just a fact. It's just the way it is. That's how we started and that's how we're going to end. And what I think is so important is that's what shows through this kind of a program. And it is virtually bulletproof. You can't pick on it because all it does is support. It's like kids. Nobody can complain about kids needing food from food banks, right? Nobody complains. And nobody complains about, donating for kids that need hospital work or whatever. It's the same thing here. Because I think it's become really cultural. And when I speak, I've learned to tell people when I do speak, like I just did a presentation I've done a couple, but I recently did one, right, obviously right after COVID opened up a little bit. It was a Zoom one for for several police departments. And I have a board member, a policeman on my board, and specifically. And also my county sheriff's department has 3 keys, one for each shift. And when those deputies are on patrol, if they see homeless people that need pet food, or if there's a DV situation or a home fire or something, or whatever, they come and they have the key and they can take whatever that person needs, right? That's just amazing. And so I did the same thing with the probation office. I'm like, they go there. I never knew any of this stuff. So they go and do a home check. And then if there's no food, they'll call DCFS to come and take the kids. But if there's no pet food, they'll call the shelter and have them come take the pets. And I'm like, that's the craziest thing I ever heard. I can feed them for 25 cents a meal. Don't take them. But they didn't have the resource. So now all of my probation officers in this county, of which there's 88 that work in the probation department, which is really
amazing.
But they're like, oh, I ain't taking that Rottweiler because Nancy will kill me. But this is the thing and I'm really loud and proud about the dog show thing. So I'll give you a brief little thing. During the fires, I get a phone call. This is the Humane Society of the United States. And I'm like, they found me. We've been watching you. And I'm like, I'm sure you have. We're so happy with what you're doing. We want to give you money. I'm like, okay. But there was a local person. She got a bunch of people together and they were bagging pet food like in her garage. So I go there to pick it up. And there's like literally a garage in someone's house with the one light bulb swinging, like, where were you on the night of? And I go in there and one lady's like got her dog with her and it's a Cholo. And I'm like, my God, you have a Cholo. And she's like, no, it's a Mexican hairless. I'm like, it's a Cholo with a flop ear. She said, no, he's a Mexican hairless. I said, okay. I know it's a Mexican hairless, but it's called a Cholo at Squintley. And I know because I have judged them in Mexico. And then after I said that, I realized I'm going to die. I'm with all these Humane Society of the United States people that are bagging food for me. And I just outed myself as a dog show person. But they were great because they get it. And that's the beauty of this program, is it puts us in a plane where you can't hate it.
That's great. What an idea. What a job you're doing. What do you have an email people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so our website is www.fidoanimeals.org.
Let me just write that again.
www.fido, capital letters, FIDO. It's Friends Involved in Dog Outreach, but it's an acronym. Fido Animeals with a capital A, NIMEALS.org. FidoAnimeals.org. And it's Fido Pet Food Bank on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Okay.
Like we've had really, like Valerie did a birthday, Michael did a birthday Facebook, really good dog people. Valerie's done it twice. Wow. And Michael Faulkner, it's just like you could just cry because it's really about us. Wayne's donated to me. And, so you've been there. And Eddie Zuck. Eddie came when he judged the Beagle National. He came and I gave him a tour of the warehouse. And OFA gave us a donation. Our refrigerator was bought by the OFA.
Wow.
I mean, this is just like, it's really, really about us.
Oh, sounds great.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that with us.
Thank you for asking.
One last question then. I ask the same question at the end of every interview, and I always have to. If you were to meet the 20-year-old Nancy, is there any advice you would give her?
Yeah, the advice I would give her is I would have gone to FIT for textile design and not shown necessarily, not done what I said I'm afraid kids would do. You struggle too much early on. I probably should have done that and made a little money and then, been set up a little bit before I struggled, early on getting going. And that would be the advice I would give is, like I said, have a little bit of a backup. Don't just jump in with both feet, right? And when you're more financially stable and you're not so pressured to take dogs to show, it's so much better. It's unsafe driving because you're desperate to win, and also taking dogs that you probably shouldn't be, which is not good for the sport, maybe for your pocketbook. That's probably the advice I would give. But I wouldn't change the way it played out.
No, because you were pretty amazing. Still are.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I had a few moments. Yeah, I really wouldn't have changed that, but I would have liked maybe to, like I said, not be so struggling early on. But it's also part of what makes you good.
Sure.
Like young in a marriage, you struggle, but there's just too many. It's too many factors in our sport, and there's too many eyes on us now, and that's a real concern.
This has been great, Nance. I'm glad you did this for us.
I'm glad you asked.
It was great to catch up with you and see you. I miss all you. I miss you.
I know.
I haven't seen you in ages.
I know. It's crazy. I thought I'm going to go to Clackamas this weekend. My God, I haven't seen these dog show people. I went to the show this weekend. I'm like, crazy. Haven't seen people in a year and a half. It's nuts. For those of us who, God, you go to 200 dog shows a year, you get tired of looking at those people, right? It's crazy. But I also think, I will make one comment. I think that for me, at least personally, this pandemic, and all the problems we've all had, it has certainly given a lot of people pause for negativity. But for me personally, I think the positive self-reflection is that it has really taught me, everyone says when something happens, you realize, but it really has taught me about a lot of good choices that I made that you really don't see. And also it's taught me to be very positive about any kind of small little positive thing that happens on any given spot. And I think that's also difficult in our sport because we're pretty hard on ourselves. And we take, whether we win or lose on the day with that client's dogs, we take that personally and we turn that into whether or not we're really a good or a bad person based on how good or bad your day went. And I think that's really, I think I learned from this pandemic too, that there's always something positive that comes from every single day, and that we should dwell on that more than the mistakes that we've made or maybe the opportunities we've missed.
You are incredible.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Great.
You're not the worst guy in the world either, Will.
That was great. I loved it. Well, thank you so much, Nancy.
Thank you.
We really enjoyed our time. And all right, Nancy.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Nancy. That was great. It was great to see you. What a great interview. You're doing so much good for everybody. I can't wait to get together with both you and Bri at some point. If you like what we're doing here, make sure you press the like, share, and subscribe button. Don't forget, if you want to get a hold of me, go to hold of me at willalexander.net, or you can send me messages to dogshowtips@gmail.com. Don't forget about the podcast, the Dog Show Drive with myself and Wayne on Spotify and Apple and all kinds of other forums. Until then, talk to you later.